Hey y'all, this is Joffrey the Giant, and this is your top 8 reasons to move your kids to Moscow, Idaho. All right, sin más, let's get into this. So number 1, of course, is education. And you guys are going to see throughout this video, several of the things I raise are going to be in the context of community. That in itself is a great reason to move to a town. Education. So first of all, there is a nationally recognized private Christian school. When I say nationally recognized, even internationally. They are a reference in the classical Christian school movement. People pay attention when they do stuff. They produce curricula. Well, they are here in town, and they work with families to help them get into the school. Okay, so it's a private school, but don't let that frighten you. This is a nationally recognized school that, listen, if you're a working family and you want your kid in there, you can make it happen. Okay? So, first of all, there's Logos. That's what I'm talking about, Logos. There's also an amazing school in town called Jubilee, also a classical Christian school. And they serve a wide audience, but their roots come from working with special needs kids. And they still excel in that today. In fact, my wife worked with some of the special needs kids this year. My wife is an art teacher. And some of the stories that I hear coming out of there moved me to tears. I don't want to get into some of those stories, but the work that they do over there with special needs kids is absolutely fantastic. And honestly, they bring that touch of individualization to that school in a way that's really wonderful, including a kindergarten that's Montessori. Now, we are a homeschooling family. My wife and I are both teachers, but we teach independently out there, different platforms. Kepler Education is one that I'm a part of, and we just had a big get-together of Kepler Education kids from all over the country coming in for a big party. And this is a great community to do that sort of thing in. But, Logos Online, and then all the other support systems for homeschoolers. So some of my kids next year are going to be doing not only Kepler, but also a local cooperative called White Horse Hall. There is classical conversations. Most importantly, though, is all the informal support that exists for families who want to take care of education, their kids' education, on their own. And so there is absolutely no lack. There is just a bounty of parents and families that want to help other parents and families succeed in education. Number 2 is security. And maybe I'm being too much of a Latin American in this, as being like one of the first things you think of. But man, people leave their doors unlocked here. It's like Mayberry. And I admit that I've actually never seen that show. But it's the whatever cultural things come to your mind with Mayberry, it is incredible. People leave their front doors unlocked, they leave their cars unlocked. So if you're a thief in California or in anywhere else and you're thinking, where could I move? This is the place to come. You can just walk in. Of course, it's also unconstitutional, according to the state constitution, for any city to make open carrying illegal. So, of course, you'll have to deal with that aspect of Idaho life. But getting into the property, piece of cake. Everything is just unlocked. The feeling of, and there are other things I'll talk about that just sort of increase this feeling of safety and security. But, I don't know what the stats are, but goodness gracious, the crime rate it's just such a safe town. And you know what? After 3 years, I have started leaving my van unlocked. I still lock my house. I can't deal with that. But it's pretty cool that people do that. Number 3 is youth sports. Now, I'm a huge fan of clubs and club sports, and I don't mean that necessarily in the elite sports sort of way. Of course, school sports exist; they're out there. Okay, if you're into that, then you can go look into that yourself. But I'll tell you, I mean, there is private baseball, including like rec baseball. There is rugby for all ages. There's soccer and like soccer camps, and this is the thing that's just communal and community. Like one of the families down our street, they hold a yearly soccer camp for little kids, and people from all over town sign up for that. I mean, that's the cool kind of thing that happens around here. There's a private lacrosse club, and so the sports aspect of things, regardless of what kind of family you are, there is just so much to do. There's a local man who basically, he does something very similar to Boy Scouts. I'm sure Boy Scouts also exist in town, but they go hiking off into, I mean, it's the wildest state in the lower 48. So there's so much cool sports-related stuff to do around here. And like just a great outdoors. Like I've got a couple of boys who are really into airsoft, and the finding other lads who are willing to run around and shoot pellets at each other and having the land to do that on, it's not a problem. All right, number 4 may seem a little off topic, but trust me, it's not. And that is just the ease of getting around if you're a kid. I have never lived in a place, I've mentioned in other videos, I've moved around quite a bit. I've never lived in a place, except maybe Brazil, like in city life. No, not even there. I've never lived in a place where kids walk around so much. And it's almost like regardless of age. Right? So within our little neighborhood, 4 and 5-year-olds walking up and down the block. And then, of course, the range extends. It's like how it was when you and I were kids. Or if you have little kids now, you probably missed out on that, honestly. But there used to be a day when kids could just walk around their block, their town. And so, there are always like, little posses of boys and girls running around the block. Our older kids walk downtown, they bike hither, thither, and yon. So even before you have a driver's license, getting around town, for most of town, there are some subdivisions that exist in kind of outlying areas that can make it a little tougher. But for most of town, just the ease of getting around. I mean, the other day, my 13-year-old boy was playing a little volleyball with my 9-year-old girl in the backyard, and we don't have a fence in our backyard. And a high schooler who's like a senior, who they know, was walking by, and he just stopped in the yard and hit the ball around with them for a few minutes before continuing on to his home about 5 or 6 blocks away. I mean, that is a beautiful thing. And so just the effect on community and family life and kid life that has, to be able to run up and down the street, to be, to have people drop by is so very cool. Related to that is number 5, which is more for teenagers, but it is so easy for teenagers to find work. Now, there can be a flip side to that when you're talking about adults, but for now we're just talking about kids. So right now, my 3 kids who are of working age are out. One is working construction, one is serving smoothies, and one is at a deli. And there's such a need for labor, even in a place that can sometimes seem glutted with college students, because the University of Idaho is here. If you are a hardworking young person, you will have absolutely no trouble finding work. There's so much work available. And so it just creates this great opportunity for kids early on to be able to get some independence, to save a little money, to make their plans. An absolutely fantastic place in that regard. Number 6, there are so many parks and city facilities that are absolutely amazing. So there are beautiful neighborhoods throughout Moscow. And when I say neighborhoods, I'm not talking about subdivisions. They are out there too, as I said, on the edges. And I hope there will be more neighborhoods built. This town desperately needs more housing and more neighborhoods. I do hope there are fewer cul-de-sacs built. And I'm not going to get into all that. But beautiful historic neighborhoods of several different economic stripes. But the gardens in particular in this town are absolutely astounding. This is the city that taught my wife to love tulips. I mean, what a great, just the private enterprise of gardening, like people making themselves and their homes beautiful for others, is absolutely fantastic. But besides that, the parks with the beautiful flowering trees and the changing of the leaves in autumn, so many city parks. Kudos to the city for that. And the city also has a couple of very cool facilities for kids. A skating rink, which is pretty sweet, but even sweeter than that, an amazing pool/water park. I mean, you can see the water slide from like 8 blocks out. This is an absolutely amazing park. All right, number 7 is the Postcard Landscape. And, you may think, well, what do kids care how pretty a place is? Well, you care how pretty the place where you raise your kids is. And I will tell you that in the spring, in the summer, the Palouse is so beautiful with those rolling green hills. I've been on many a carpool with the rugby team that I coach. And there's a spot in Washington as we're driving out through the Palouse, early in our drives out to play our games in central Washington, where there's just these 2 rolling hills meet, and there's an old 100-year-old stone shed type thing, like a really small outbuilding, and it is covered in some sort of flowering vine. And when I drive past it in the spring, just the beauty, Moscow Mountain nearby, and these little parks for easy, beautiful hiking. And so, not only driving through, but then taking your kids to go just walk through that landscape is absolutely sublime and uplifting. Finally, and this is another one that may not be self-evidently for kids, but oh, trust me, it is. The cultural and intellectual life. So I guess in here I'll shoehorn in music education. I meant to mention that during the education bit, the very first point, but man, there are all of these amazing music teachers, Bonet Music Academy, the folks at U of I, the folks at New St. Andrews, and they're constantly putting on events as well. Mark Reagan is a local composer, and he's doing house shows, and now there's not really much of a music scene here. If you're thinking about like, woo, let's rock, but if your kid's learning piano, if your kid's learning violin, if your kid is learning to sing, the choral stuff that happens here. So not just Christmas and Easter, but at other times as well. Just the number of concerts and opportunities to learn how to be musical are so high. And that's why I put a shoehorn in here instead of education, having forgot to put it in education. There is so much opportunity for great conversation here. There's a good gaming community. There's a local games shop called Journey's End. Hodgins is also great. And at Hodgins, there's like this little club of guys who get together. And one of my sons, hanging out there, have some great conversations with some grown-ups. And then at Journey's End, the same thing. And then bookstores around town. And just the opportunity and the high standard of being in this educational sort of community where people are really concerned with teaching, with learning, with teaching their kids. And it just sets this bar, which is remarkable, to see 16-year-olds talking about this thing or that thing, enriching each other, having conversations with adults. It is a thing that tends to happen community-wide and is really worthwhile for your teenagers particularly, but a great example and a great way of having participation and family participation across all ages. Now, I know that some of those things were a little more abstract than others, like the skating rink is here. That's pretty concrete. and some of it, maybe a little more abstract, postcard landscape or, intellectual vibrancy. But I'm telling you, some of this more abstract stuff, it's vibrant. And I know that you have to be here and see it and experience it. But I hope that this video can impart, maybe you're picking things up here and there as you're considering moving out here. Take my word for it, and then the words of others as you start to do your due diligence and examine whether you should move here. This is an absolutely fantastic place to raise your kids. Perhaps you heard some squeaking, squealing, and laughing in the background as I was recording this video. That's a bunch of girls over at my neighbor's house, including my daughter, just frolicking and having a good old time in the backyard. And we've lived in good places before. My kids have had good friends, but really just the abundance of awesomeness for kids that exists in this town is something I'm really grateful to God for. All right, I hope this video has been helpful. The peace of Christ be upon you.
Our educational system, and indeed our society as a whole, was destroyed in the 19th century by the German influence.
Really?
Ability as a concept turned into a mechanical, empirical construct. You may be a beneficiary of this system.